Yesterday, we've been talking about this, and it's unfolding really literally in the last 24 hours. But Special Counsel Robert Hur's report investigating the president's mishandling of classified documents from his time as vice president came, and the report recommended that there be no charges filed against the president. It was a 345-page report, something in that ballpark. It had photos of tattered boxes that contained White House files that were stashed away in his garage. But look, in all of this that took place, the report kind of ended by saying they were sympathetic to the president, and if he were to go before a jury, he would simply present himself as a sympathetic kind of figure, as a well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory. So that's it. So was he kind of mentally struggling while he was vice president? This was years ago. Anyways, to unpack all of this and to help us get to the bottom of it is Jeff Clark. He's a former U.S. Assistant Attorney General and now the Senior Fellow and Director of Litigation at the Center for Renewing America. Jeff, welcome back to Washington Watch. Appreciate you coming back.
Well, Congressman, it's great to be here. Thank you.
Well, listen, you were on the program just 24 hours ago when all of this started breaking. You were on yesterday with Tony. And we just wanted to have you back here to unpack it, as so much actually came down the pipe after the program ended yesterday. So the president claims that this report is somehow exonerating him by the special counsel. Is that what's going on?
Well, I mean, I think it's a whitewash, but I don't think it's an exoneration, if that difference makes sense. Congressman, look, one of the most striking things about the report is, to me, in the executive summary, there's a discussion where they say Biden has a ghostwriter, and the ghostwriter is going over things from the past that they're going to cover in the book, and they're going to cover some classified information. And Biden, communicates with him and says, well, I've managed, after some looking, I've found where the classified material is. Okay. So what does this show? This shows that he knowingly took, and the report concludes this, information, classified information, including up to the SCI level, the sensitive compartmentalized information level, which is extremely high, and is only supposed to be looked at in a SCIF. And I've been in SCIFs before, especially the SCIF at the Justice Department, and he took them home instead, and he definitely knew he had them, and he knew roughly where they were. He started looking for them, and he found them. So nevertheless, the Hur report says, well, he has a poor memory and he might, have sort of misplaced documents, et cetera. That's all not relevant. Like, at the moment, he clearly has, I think, senility. There shouldn't be any senility exception to the criminal law. But back at the time where he was at least doing this biography with his ghostwriter, he knew that he had classified information. So he clearly meets the knowingly test of the statute. Yet President Trump is getting prosecuted for under the Espionage Act in violation, I think, of the Presidential Records Act. And Biden, who at the time was either vice president or senator for these documents, he's not getting prosecuted at all. It's a complete double standard. It's a whitewash. And, Biden's trying to sell it at an even better level than that, to say, look, that I was exonerated. They found me essentially not guilty of any criminal conduct. Well, whereas I actually think, much like the Comey situation with Hillary Clinton, they did find all the elements of the crime, but they're just deciding not to go forward against it, I think, for political reasons, Congressman.
Yeah, listen, I agree wholeheartedly with you. And by the way, we're talking with Jeff Clark, former U.S. Assistant Attorney General and now Senior Fellow and Director of Litigation at the Center for Renewing America. I appreciate you bringing up the comparison between what's going on now and what was going on with President Trump. I mean, this seems to me and to a whole lot of other people that this is highlighting, again, a two-tiered system of justice here. Go down this path a little bit further as you were just beginning to do so. The difference between the way Joe Biden is being treated right now versus Donald Trump.
Well, it's really striking. And yes, I agree. We have a two-tiered system of justice at this point. We have massive lawfare on multiple fronts against President Trump. And what we have with President Biden is a kind of rearguard whitewash action to defend him. It couldn't be more striking. I think President Trump has been handed on a silver platter a selective prosecution defense that he can use against the documents case that is pending in Florida. And, you know, look, they try to say, even in this Hur report, that Biden is less culpable than President Trump, even if you grant everything about President Trump, which I don't. And I don't buy that for a second, because you look at this and they make findings that Biden basically took notes in notebooks of his classified briefings, including about things like Afghanistan and other security protocols, about sources and methods. And then he took the notebooks home with him. So, Congressman, look, the way this works, and I know this from personal experience, even near the end of the Trump administration, I got a very sensitive classified briefing. I'd never seen so many different compartments of security protection on that particular product. I had to go review it, you know, in a SCIF or under lock and key, in a lock bag. And then when I took notes on it, the notes, and this was very clear in any security briefing you receive about access to classified information, if you take notes on a classified document, it's like the transitive property in math. It acquires the same classification status as the document that you're looking at and you're taking notes on. So when I left the Justice Department, not only did I return, because my office, you know, could serve as a SCIF under certain circumstances, I returned the copy of the report that I looked at, but I also marked my notes with all the same classification markings, and then I took it up to the command center, which has the main SCIF for the whole Justice Department at Main Justice, and I dropped it off. That's what you're supposed to do. That's what you're briefed to do. Biden had been in government a lot longer than I had. I served about 6.5 years across 2 different administrations. I mean, Biden's kind of as old as the sun, and he would have had to have gotten multiple briefings. For him to take classified notes in a series of notebooks home with him to Virginia or Delaware and to the Biden Penn Center, it's just inexcusable, and it's clearly conduct that needs to be examined very closely.
Oh, absolutely. And you look, and I've been in a SCIF many, many times, just as you mentioned, and that's exactly right. You end up having to, you can't even take your notes with you. You have to leave them there. But I look at even the raid of Mar-a-Lago. I mean, was that necessary? Was there a raid on the president's home? Why not?
Right. Total double standard there. They do a raid on President Trump, and he has presidential protections, right? And this is important in 2 respects. First of all, he is the font of declassification authority. And I think there's a reasonable argument that putting aside declassifying by issuing a particular memo or signing a particular form, the president has the power to declassify by course of conduct. And that's, you know, I think consistent with the fact that this is a power that traces to Article 2 and to the president's ability to be both the commander in chief as any sensitive military matters and is the chief magistrate in terms of all domestic matters. Biden did not have those protections as the vice president, unless he could produce some kind of memo that said Obama delegated that power to him when he was vice president. We've never seen anything like that. I don't think it exists. And he certainly didn't have it when he was a senator. So he doesn't have these protections. And yet, what do they do with him? He gets total powder puff treatment. The FBI, you know, shows up. They, you know, talk to his lawyers. They're escorted around room to room. It's all a voluntary process. They sort of leave lawyers in charge of documents for a week or more, you know, Biden's personal lawyers. And this is not the way President Trump was treated. Instead, first we got told that the FBI did the Mar-a-Lago raid on their own. Then that evaporated, and we saw Attorney General Garland go in front of the cameras and admit that he had ordered it. And then Karine Jean-Pierre was simultaneously saying, oh, Biden didn't have anything to do with it. Whatever it was something over at the Justice Department. And then it turned out that through FOIA requests, America First Legal managed to get information showing that Biden himself had actually allowed access to Trump documents at the National Archives, which they then used to try to pin something on Trump. So the idea that Biden, the president, had his hands totally off of going after President Trump, even that has turned out to be a lie. And certainly the way the FBI treated Trump versus the way they treated Biden is night and day.
It really is, and it's startling because this reveals corruption. It reveals a weaponized government going after political enemies and opponents. And in many instances, we are seeing now IRS or some of these other agencies actually going after Trump supporters. I mean, this thing starts a snowballing effect of a corrupt justice system, a weaponized justice system, and all of a sudden, all deemed political opponents can potentially be in the crosshairs of all of this. And yet, and this is what I want to get your comment on here, it seems to me that the report itself and the media now, everyone is trying to excuse this classified debacle with President Biden as poor memory, as a frail old man right now. But the issue, look, our country can survive dementia, but our country cannot survive corruption. And that is what seems to be at place here. It is a matter of corruption, and we can't sweep that under the rug. This is something that needs to be dealt with. We are witnessing a two-tiered system of justice, and that must be addressed. How do we go about that?
Well, look, we have to fight back. We have to expose it. So obviously the conservative media sphere, like this program, is important in that regard. I think that those who are under lawfare attack, and I'll count myself among those, they're trying to take, Congressman, my bar license from me in D.C. They've made me one of the criminal defendants in the Fulton County case. There are others like Peter Navarro, who's just been ordered to report to jail, Steve Bannon, the other defendants in the Fulton County action, the co-defendants in the documents case in Mar-a-Lago down in Florida, who were interacting with President Trump. Yet this biographer who knew that he was handling classified information because Biden told him so, they declined to prosecute him in this report too. Again, it's a double standard. I think if you can help support the legal defense of individuals who are under fire like that, that is good. I think the most important thing is to work hard for election integrity so that we can get, I think, the likely Republican nominee or vastly likely Republican nominee, Donald Trump, back in the White House so that we can start cleaning these things up. Because at the moment, I think the FBI is weaponized. It is politicized. We need to turn that around, and we need to get it out of the business of being a massive intelligence gathering agency and moving it back to being, G-men who enforce the law.
Well, I tell you, all this is extremely frightening. To look at, to consider, and to have people like you. I mean, the last thing we need is a weaponized government going after political opponents. And when we see it happening, now is the time to shout it out, to shine the light on it, to put a stop to it. Jeff Clark, former U.S. Assistant Attorney General and now Senior Fellow and Director of Litigation at the Center for Renewing America, thank you so much for joining us this evening on Washington Watch.